So, hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for this thought-provoking webinar. It's great to see so much interest and actually attendance for the future of decision intelligence in financial services. So, with me today is the founder and CEO of Flexral, Arash Aghlara, and we're very excited to see what he has in store for us today. My name is Adrian Nagorski, an advocate for decision intelligence in organizations. So just before we go over to Arash, I want to just go over a few of the housekeeping items as usual. My favorite part, the Q&A, is at the end, and we have the head of customer success, Golly, monitoring that. So if you have any questions, you can just put them in and she'll answer them live. We're also recording the session, so for any reason, if you get disconnected, don't worry, post-event, we will send out the recording. Flexral is headquartered in Melbourne, Australia. The reason for our existence is because we want to enable organizations to be able to adapt and adjust to changing environments. We have customers across the world in almost every industry, healthcare, government, and of course, financial services. All right, so without further ado, Arash, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Thank you everyone for joining us. Let's get it started. This is a very interesting stat. 78% of us use data to justify the decisions we've already made. In fact, that is quite opposite of what we wanted to do. We wanted to use data to make better business decisions. What do you think is the case? Why is that the case? Well, first is flaw in human nature, the way our brains wired, probably, and what is called is confirmation bias. So that's the first issue. The second issue is how we practice data and analytics. So this process you see is called action framework or data and analytics workflow or process. This is what we've been deploying to organizations over decades. And the purpose of that is to enable organizations to make better business decisions. And hence we saw the stats, which it doesn't deliver on what it is promised. So the way we work with this workflow is we acquire data, then we organize it for information, then we analyze it to create insights. That can be any type of insights, predictive, prescriptive, etc. And then from the other side, business wants the outcome, so they deliver actions and measure the outcome that they want to deliver. Now, the problem with this process is, as we can see, there is no explicit stage at any of these stages for decision making. It's open for everyone to take any type of decision at any stage. And what that means is the whole industry of business intelligence uses data information insight up to the inside. The belief in that particular segment of the industry is actionable insight equals to business decision, which we know for a fact it's not because of the stat I just showed you. And then the other side of the process is action. So solutions on the action automation, campaign, process automation, workflow, RPA, all of them believe that the action is actually the decision we want to make. So they make decisions buried inside the systems and processes and automation, and makes it significantly difficult to understand what it is and bring clarity to organizations and transparency to organizations. This is not the only issue. So the decisions are not really specifically designed inside these processes. The other issue is the definition of the decision itself is open to interpretation. Now, having said that, let's define what decision is. Decision is act of deciding, making a judgment based on data, insight, rules, and calculations. Now, having this definition in mind, let's go back and have a look at the process again. Now, by nature of this process, it introduces another problem to organizations. Not only that, it doesn't explicitly define what the decision is and when it should happen, it explicitly creates a barrier between the owners of the data and infrastructure, which is like head of data, chief data officer, CIO for IT, and the business side, which is operation, business, SMEs, that they're doing the actual business operation and they want to create that outcome and deliver the outcome to the end client. So this barrier is created because of the nature of this process. In fact, with many of our engagement with the CIOs and head of data, they believe that they already have the best data, the best quality, the best insight that they deliver, the accurate algorithm that someone can possibly train with using those best data. And when we talk to the other side of the fence, business operation, they almost always say that that's not exactly what we want, what is being provided to us for making a better business decision. And this is not only our experience in our engagement, we can see the global stat, 77% of business leaders believe that the insight algorithm data that they've been provided for making the decisions is irrelevant for what they want to make the decisions for. And what that means is there is a very big mismatch between what business expects and what data and AI and what data and IT provides as the artifacts of data and analytics effort. This is called type 3 error, meaning that mismatch IT and data solve for the problem that doesn't exist. And what is going to happen now, they throw that over the fence, hope for the best that it sticks with the business and they can solve the business problem, which we know they can't based on this that I just showed. Now, it gets even worse and more complicated because technology adds another layer of complexity. We introduce AI, agentic AI, LLM, for the hope that these barriers magically goes away. But guess what? 80% of AI ML projects fail to deliver any meaningful business values. And this itself confirms that this process, either you throw over the fence your insight and data or use agentic AI or LLM or whatever the technology is not going to solve this problem. So what's the solution? The solution is we have to practice decision intelligence. Decision intelligence is a discipline, enables organizations to truly make business decisions using data. But there is a problem with the whole decision intelligence because there are different takes on decision intelligence, how it should work. Some use the data again as the base, some use the action as the base, so it's open. And what that means is if you use the data or action or anything like that, you're not gonna get any result better than the traditional data and analytics process that we've been deploying for years. There's no difference. On the contrast, decision-centric approach makes business decisions the first-class citizens of organizations. And what that means is, rather than focusing on data and insight and machine learning and process and action, just change the focal point to the things that we want to do. Making business decisions, hence putting business decisions as the core foundation for this methodological approach. Why decision? Based on many different studies that have been done, one of them, Bain & Capital, talks about 95% of financial results are correlated with the decisions organizations make and execute. Therefore, this alone makes business decisions the most critical and important organizational asset in an organization. What does it look like? So if we want to practice decision-centric approach, meaning that we want to make business decisions first-class citizen of organization, what will happen to our data and analytics process that are in place and people are using it? So decision-centric approach is explicitly modeling business decisions based on the outcome that we want to achieve. And then we use that explicit business decisions, which we're going to talk about that in a minute, to identify what information, what data, what process, what algorithm do we need to support that business decision. Because now we can see decision-centric approach is an outcome-driven approach. All of a sudden, the problem of the mismatch is going away. And decision-centric approach advocates for a common language and a common language that can be understood with all stakeholders from the IT and data, business and operations. So everyone should understand what a decision is we're talking about and how it's done. And this establishes the basis of having conversation on how we can actually improve these existing business decisions organizations. And because it's outcome driven, it eliminates that subjectivity of what the business decision is and how we need to approach it. It closes the gap. There is no throw over the fence behavior for analytics artifacts. And what is more important, because now it's a collaborative approach to understand what business decision is and how it's done, it makes everyone accountable for the outcome. However, just changing from the focal point to decisions is not going to solve all the problems, solve some of them that we discussed. But only focusing on decision enforces the behavior of creating silos, automated decisions. They do not share the end-to-end context of what the engagement with enterprise is from the client side. They are mostly static, so they don't reflect the feedback we receive from the clients and customers, meaning that they're not adaptive. And as the result, they're not truly personalized to that specific engagement with the client. It's even worse. Often we see, because of the decision we execute for a specific subject, the outside circumstances and condition changes, then the decisions that we already have, as it's been static and not adaptive, they produce the results that are irrelevant to that particular situation. They're not situation aware. And this disconnection between reality and the decisions and outcome they produce is called disconnected decision experience. So how do we solve this decision-centric, with decision-centric approach? We solve the problem of over the fence and gap and communication and what decision is and how it's done. How do we solve the disconnected decision experience? With open decision intelligence platform. FlexRule provides open decision intelligence platform, which is based on decision-centric approach. It promises the openness. What that means is that common language that solves a big part of the problem that traditional workflow of data analytics put in organization, it solves that, but it's very important and critical to recognize this common language cannot be done internally using a specific group, because as soon as you do that, that language is not common. It's for that group, for that specific purpose. So it's not going to become the common language of the entire organizations. The way FlexRule approaches this common language is to leverage the standard for decision modeling and decision execution, which is called DMN, Decision Model and Notation. This is an open standard with multiple conformance level. And this conformance level means the model you create is not only a visual, graphical, beautiful language on the screen, they are actually executable. So we are committed to make sure those visual language that you build in using decision model annotation are executable. And our commitment to open principle is not only the fact that we use this open standard, we provide open architecture, open SDK for IT, open telemetry, open deployment, open execution, a full stack of principles going one after another, ensuring that this collaborative approach to make business decisions the center core of business operation, making them first-class citizen of organizations, happens successfully. The other challenge in organization is many of the existing platform, because of their specific approach on data and AI and different things rather than the decision, they're not decision-centric UI. They don't provide that UI. Therefore, you fall back to the bad behavior that the traditional approach of data and analytics was suggesting and driving that bad behavior. Now, this decision-centric approach is one side of the equation. The other side of it, the platform should really be catered for different audience, as decision intelligence is a multidisciplinary approach to using data to make better business decisions. So we have many different stakeholders. What FlexRule does in providing those platforms and screens to the end user is ensuring that those screens are familiar user interfaces. This familiarity is not by accident, is by design to make sure users feel home, and we leverage on the fact that they know how to use those existing tooling, so the learning curve will be minimized. The other critical point to make sure the projects we run as a decision intelligence project in an organization is successful is the modular approach. And the way it works at FlexRule platform is that we use the decision model annotation conformance tree as the basis of the decision-centric user interface. You build your decisions, you define what it is and how it's done using DMN conformance level 3. So it's not only the visual interface that you see, it's actually the live specification of how the decision is done. You can execute it, deploy it, etc. But remember the problem of the disconnected decision experience. The way we solve that problem is with using one of our patent pending technology called continuous decision model. The continuous decision model allows you to model the entire context and entire journey of a client using this specific type of modeling, which we're going to talk about that. And more importantly, it captures the feedback from the clients. Now, speaking of the feedback and continuous decisioning, then we use decision optimization technique in reinforcement learning, and we train the model that makes sure the decisions we execute have that relevant to the outside world where the client's living. So we talked in this session about decision modeling. Let's have a look at quickly what does it look like. A decision modeling using decision model annotation. This is like 10-minute crash course in decision modeling. Now, again, as I mentioned, FlexRule leverages the open standard decision model annotation conformance level 3. And when we're talking about modeling business decision, that's exactly what it looks like at this screen. A graphical user interface, decision-centric user interface that allows you to build a decision model. In DMN, this particular model is called decision requirements diagram. If you look at the top section at the right-hand side, you can see there are different shapes as part of this diagram, and every shape represents a specific purpose for how this decision is done. So you can see now the pink is an input. So customer personal data or customer additional data or whatever that specific decision is for, right? So once we build that, it's actually help you to understand what type of data do you need? What type of decisions do you need to have in place to make sure you can successfully, in this example, calculate the health premium? It reduces the whole problem of going down the path, doing the implementation, and then noticing, oh, by the way, we didn't have that data. It brings it up very early on so you can say this particular scenario is not ready, the readiness is not there, move on to the next one. Or you can start putting the infrastructure together if that's a very critical decision you want to automate to capture that data as you go along. So it brings all of a sudden the transparency and clarity, how the decision is made, what components do you need, what algorithms is relevant, and what data and information do you need to capture to make that decision happen. Speaking of the input data and what you need for the data, FlexRole uses a semantic model called fact concept. Fact concept allows you to build different structure that the decision requires for execution. Now, it can be a relation of set of data together. It can be composite data. It can be any type of data. You capture the type of information. You capture the relationship. You capture the constraints, what it should be there to make this decision executable, because you might not have that data at the moment. With this fact concept semantic model, it brings the visibility. What exact information do you need? Are they mandatory? Are they optional? And all of this data validation happens explicitly as part of fact concept modeling. Once we have this semantic model in place, we're going to go down the path of each of these boxes in the decisions requirement diagram, which by the way are decisions, and implement them appropriately by the nature of that particular decision. For example, in this particular scenario, you can see COVID. COVID decision, in this particular case, is a rule-driven decision. Now, some decisions are rule-driven, some decisions are computational, some decisions are based on machine learning trained model, some decisions are based on just data query to see if something is there or not. So there are many different type of decision. You can still use this technique to build all of them together, and as a cohesive model, it executes it. At this particular screen, what you see is a rule-driven decision based on a decision modeling technique called decision table, a tabular form that allows you to put input and output together. You can have as many as input, green columns, as many as output, pink column, and execute the decision. And the result of that goes back to the decision graph, decisions requirement diagram, and rolls out up to the final decision. Other technique, if it is rule-driven, is called natural language. So natural language allows you to build business rule around the specific topic. In this specific case is decisions around income, using business glossaries and business terminologies and semantic model that you put together early on. And the reason we call it natural language, because you naturally can read through it. You can model your business rules using your spoken language by establishing a ubiquitous language and terminologies across teams. Now, once we've done that, as I mentioned, not all the decisions are rule-driven. There are computation, calculation, mathematical operation, nested procedural logic you need to execute. The way that decision model and notation handles this complex computational logic is using a technique of modeling called box expression. Essentially, it's a reusable expressions that you can use across your different projects. And when I call something expression, by definition, it means, remember Excel formula, that's an expression. So if you put multiple of them together, it becomes box expression. Now, to just quickly summarize, decision model and notation, if I go back a couple of, we use decision model and notation for decision modeling. You start with establishing what the decision is and how it is done at the high level, conceptual level. which is not only high level, it's executable because it's conformance level 3. You do create the fact concept, a semantic model, what data and what the relation, what constraints do you need to make sure decision is executable. Then you start drilling down in these individual nodes and model them according to that specific decision. If that's rule-driven, decision table and natural language. If that's computational, you can use box expression. By the way, in this specific example, you can see base price calculation. We don't drill down to that at this point, but it's a machine learning algorithm that has been trained and integrated into this model. So decisions requirement diagram allows you to build a composite AI, combining multiple AI techniques together to create the decisions that what you want. Now, we automated the decision. This is a very specific decision that is, for example, for price calculation. Now, how do we make sure we can have that continuous decision along the engagement of the customer journey with our organizations? Because that's only one decision, and we built multiple different other decisions. Something has to bring that all together. And that's not definitely a process or workflow. The reason for that is customer journeys are not predictable nor linear. Therefore, workflow and process, you need to know what the next step is, and you need to predict what the customers do, which is literally impossible. They're not predictable, they're not linear. The answer to solve this complex problem is continuous decision model. So continuous decision model is the real-time event-driven decision model that can act based on the situation and state the customers are in. It handles exception, it handles interruption, it allows you to capture all the user interactions automatically and capture the feedback. So you have a full cycle scenario implemented along of each of these stages. Then you can kick off different decision, automated decisions that we build or automated processes that we build. The way it works in a customer journey scenario, if you look at this, we have channels. We need to deliver the omni-channel experience, consistent, accurate across all the channels. Now, if the customers goes, for example, have a call to an agent, based on the stages that the continuous decision model detects, it kicks off this automated decision, which, by the way, uses the data and machine learning and rules and computation. But the point here is, based on the stage of the customer and the channel, we kick off some automated decisions or processes. And let's say on the channel, they talk to agent and the conversation is finished. When they go back to their email, you can see they based on engagement of the email that's been sent to their inbox, now the automated customer journey based on continuous decision kicks off processes, which, by the way, as part of that process, we kick off some decisions. So you can see this continuous decision becomes a critical part to model a customer journey, a complex behavior of customers with your enterprise. To finish that off, the future of decision intelligence is based on decision-centric approach, ensuring the decisions are first-class citizens of organizations, and not only that, based on an open principle of decision intelligence platform, which ensures the decisions are contextual and situation aware, they are continuous, and they are adaptive. And with this, I can hand over to Adrian to see if we have any questions.
Excellent, Arash. Great presentation. And indeed, there are a couple of questions. I also saw that the chat was pretty active. So thank you, Golly, for speaking to everyone there. And one of the questions is, to support decision making, would an organization need to build a separate data store and replicate the data from their data lake?
So that's a very interesting question. The answer is it depends. If the organizations want to do that, they can deploy a concept of customer analytics record, which that means a separate data store, separate database, etc. Some heads of data within organizations, depends on the practice they do, they don't like this idea, and then as the result, they can use the semantic model as what the data needs, and then we have a concept of live context, which it goes to one single source of truth and grabs everything that is required for that decision. You don't need even to load the whole data. You can, based on the situation as part of that continuous decision model and the decision that we want to execute, live context brings the required data from multiple different sources and feeds that in. So the short answer, it depends on the practice they do. They can do that, or they can use live context.
Good answer. It kind of leads into the next question, which is all customer data required to make decisions, or can the system only use data that is relevant to make that specific decision?
Yes, thank you very much for asking. I kind of answered that already, but not directly. So the purpose of live context is exactly that. Rather than loading everything that we have from the customer, live context is smart to understand for this specific decision based on the fact concept, that semantic model. These are the information we need, and automatically brings those information together. And what's interesting about the live context is that when we build multiple individual silo decisions that are relevant, the input to those decisions most often and in many cases are kind of similar, but someone requires a little bit, someone requires a little more, less. Some fields are needed here, some fields are not needed here. And the way generally in traditional approach of decision automation works, you handcraft everything individually. But the problem the live context solves is not only brings the relevant data together, but it makes that context end-to-end shareable between all the decisions. So you build it once and then you can reuse it across multiple decisions. That ensures the auditability, transparency, the usage. It solves a lot of complex problem, because putting the data together, to be honest, is very procedural, dirty, and very time consuming, and live context solves that problem very smartly.
Right. There's a question from chat, and that one is, what is your experience in engaging other teams like data scientists, marketing, martech business teams with this uninformed language approach?
So this uniform language, which is called decision model annotation, actually solve a very core of this problem. It's a visual language, and it's not something that Flexrule built it or some other vendors built it. Therefore, there are lots of resources and very easy to consume to make sure that everyone on that team, from marketing, from sales, from the data and analytics, from IT, understand that the very basic of communication is having and understanding the common language. With DMN, that is already solved. And by the way, if you want to learn DMN, you go flexrule.com/DMN. We have a tutorial that you can learn DMN in 20 minutes. And if you are more interested, you can go to academy.flexrule.com and get the full DMN certification. It's a very easy language to learn, and it's very easy to, with clarity and transparently, explain what the decision is and how it's made, because it's a visual language.
Yes, I was actually going to plug the Flexroll Academy. So yes, be the first one on your team to get DMN certified. All right, and I think there's one last question here. Does Flexroll have a self-learning capability? And if yes, what algorithm does that self-learning environment use? So,
Yes, absolutely. So I mentioned Flexrule is having a modular approach, and the beauty of that is you don't need to use everything all together. You use as you mature and your organization mature and your data is collected. So we have a self-learning capability as part of our decision optimization, which what it does is the continuous decision model captures all the user interaction, captures the feedback, and we store it in our centralized database. Now, the optimization module uses reinforcement learning based on the feedback and interactions that we have with the clients, and it trains a artificial intelligence model that what it does is it optimizes the decision. What that means is, let's say in the product selection decision, a customer is eligible for 5 products. Okay, so which one of them is better suited for this particular clients based on the characteristic, age, marital status that they have? Which one of them is less likely that they are able to pay back the loan, or which one of them is likely to make sure they spend less? So this optimization is the area that goes on top of the eligibility, and it makes sure the decisions are highly relevant to the end customer.
Thank you, Arash. And with that, I just want to say that Flexral as an organization has significant experience in introducing decision-making in organizations, helping with adoption and really setting up for success. So please feel free to reach out to us if you'd like to have a deeper conversation on how decisioning can help you in your organization. So with that, I want to say thank you again for taking the time and joining us. I hope this session was insightful. And as always, we are on LinkedIn and X. If you'd like to follow us, our handle is @Flexral. So please, I look forward to talking to you or seeing you on the next session. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.